We will begin here shortly. If you could please start heading to your seats, and some housekeeping comments, if you could please turn off your cell phones. Thank you.
Howdy. Welcome to the 2021 San Antonio A&M Club Muster. Would you please rise for the posting of the colors by the members of the 433rd Airlift Wing and remain standing as Lane Mitchell, class of 1979, leads us in singing of the national anthem and gives the invocation.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight all the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Would you bow your heads with me, please? Gracious and loving Heavenly Father, we gather here today, along with Aggies throughout the world, to remember our brothers and sisters who've gone home to you. Give thanks for the place they've filled in our lives and for their part in the heritage of Texas A&M that unites us at this occasion. We are humbly grateful for our Aggie heritage and the comradeship we enjoy. Strengthen this sense of our God-given love and friendship. May it spread to men and women of all schools, nations, and races, and bring people of the world into a new bond of friendship and peace. For those whose absence is marked by our roll call, we pray that you fill the place that they held in our hearts with your presence. May we have a reverent appreciation for the great examples and sacrifices given by those of us whom we honor by silver taps. Bless the inspiration of this occasion, that we may be strong in body, keen in mind, friendly in society, and religious at heart. In your most holy name we pray. Amen.
You may be seated. Good evening. My name is Reagan Freiling, and I am Fighting Texas Aggie class of 1993, and I'm honored to serve as the Vice President of the San Antonio A&M Club and the Muster Chair for this year, 2021. Muster is such a unique tradition, and it forever unites and links Aggies through each and every generation. The San Antonio A&M Club is a unique club, and it's the only A&M club to own its own facility, Aggie Park, and this is our 100th year. We're so proud of those Aggies who have come before and dedicated their time and resources to make this park what it is today. If you look at the inset inside your program, we've printed a history of Aggie Park, and we've listed each San Antonio A&M Club president on the back. The original Aggie Park is a unique place which, like Muster, has a long history of connecting Aggies from generations. This is your club. Aggie Park is your Aggie home, and we're honored that you're here with us tonight, gathered with your family to celebrate this unique tradition. I know our numbers here tonight are limited by necessity due to COVID. And I know we have a great number of our members that are watching on live stream at home. But if you are here tonight and are a past president of the San Antonio A&M Club, would you please stand at this time and be recognized? Thank you, and thank you for your selfless service to the San Antonio A&M Club. We will now hear from this year's San Antonio A&M Club president, Logan Richter, class of 2005. He's a lot younger.
Thanks for that, Reagan. All right, howdy. I would like to welcome everyone here tonight and those of us joining online for the 2021 muster at Aggie Park. I'd first like to thank our chair, Reagan Freiling, Mary, Mark, the muster committee, the Aggie Women's Club, and all the volunteers that have made it possible for us to get together tonight. As Reagan mentioned earlier, 2021 marks our club's 100-year anniversary. 100 years ago, a group of Aggies led by C.C. Polly Kruger organized the San Antonio A&M Club to become an official alumni club of the Association of Former Students. And over these last 100 years, the club has continually provided for opportunities for former students and friends of Texas A&M to gather together and enjoy each other's company. Not long after it was founded, our club bought this land that we're on today in 1946 and built a home here that we call Aggie Park. A few years later, a scholarship program was started, which today has provided well over $1 million in scholarships to Bexar County kids attending Texas A&M. Just this last week, our scholarship committee, chaired by Mike Hedges, completed evaluating over 130 applications and selecting this year's recipients that will be approved at the Board of Directors' upcoming board meeting. We continue to follow in the footsteps that Aggies before us. We continue to follow in the footsteps of the Aggies that have come before us with our club mission, which is to promote fellowship among former students and friends of Texas A&M, to spread the Aggie spirit across the greater San Antonio area, and to provide scholarships to Bexar County students attending Texas A&M. Keeping in line with our mission, we've got some great events coming up. Next week, Monday, the 26th, we're having a blood drive here at Aggie Park from 1 to 6. We've got the Aggie Family Barbecue Saturday, May 1st, an event that's been running since 1927. So come out, bring your family, your friends, and relax at Aggie Park, where you can enjoy Aggie Park's famous barbecue chicken plate and some beans cooked by Mr. Upmore over here. There will be plenty of outdoor entertainment. We're going to have a petting zoo, rides, games, silent auction, and we'll also be accepting plate donations that we will be delivering to first responders on the day of the event. The very next day, we're going to be having a groundbreaking ceremony to kick off the $1.6 million expansion and renovation of Aggie Park. Something that we've been working on for quite a while now. The construction project is scheduled to be completed in October, and so during construction, we are going to still host Monday lunch programs, but we're going to do it down the street at Holy Spirit Church on Blanco Road. On May 19th, we'll be having Coaches Night. This is going to be taking place at Tejas Rodeo in their 35,000 square foot outdoor pavilion. Jimbo's going to be coming into town, and it's going to be a great opportunity to listen to the coach in person and get an inside scoop on our football program. There's going to be a live auction, great food, silent auction, raffles, and plenty of good bull. So come out and enjoy. On May 20th, Young Aggies are going to be hosting a happy hour event at Rebecca Creek Distillery. The Young Aggies have happy hour events on every third Thursday of the month. We've got an SEC tailgate in the fall. It's going to kick off the football season. That's on August 14th at Honey Creek Ranch. We have a Sporting Clays event September 9th at the National Shooting Complex. And when we get finished with the expansion and renovation project, we're going to have a big party out here where we can party like it's 2019. This club and these events don't just happen by themselves. We have an incredible group of individuals on our board of directors. We've got a great Young Aggie coordinator, and we've got so many volunteers that make this club so much fun to be a part of. Getting to work alongside these great Aggies makes me proud to be a member of the San Antonio A&M Club, proud to be an Aggie, and honored to be serving as this year's club president. I would now like to introduce Sloan Wendell, class of 1992, to read the Muster tradition.
In the beginning, Aggies gathered together on June 26, 1883, to live over their college days, the victories and defeats, won and lost, upon the drill field and in the classroom. By April 21st, 1903, the annual gathering evolved into a celebration of Texas independence on San Jacinto Day. These early meetings included field games and banquets for Aggies to reflect and celebrate their memories of Aggie land. Let every alumni answer a roll call, wrote the former students. It was not until in 1922, however, that April 21st became the official day of events for all Aggies. Thus, the annual tradition of Muster was born. March 1923, Texas Aggie urged, if there is an A&M man in 100 miles of you, you are to expected to get together, eat a little, and live over the days you spent at the A&M College of Texas. Aggie traditions have gotten a way of getting bigger and better. Still remembering and honoring the time spent in Aggie land, the tradition of Muster has grown in strength, meaning, and spirit. By 1929, the meetings had spread worldwide, and in 1942, Aggie Muster gained international recognition. 25 men, led by General George Moore, class of '08, mustered together at the Japanese siege of the Philippine islands of Corregidor. Knowing that muster might soon be called for them, these Aggies embodied the commitment, the dedication, and the friendship that is the essence of the Aggie spirit. They risked their lives to honor their beliefs and their values. The small group of Aggies on an outpost during World War II inspired what has developed into one of our most honored and greatest traditions. Today, Muster is celebrated in more than 300 places worldwide, with the largest ceremony taking place at Texas A&M campus in College Station. The ceremony brings together more Aggies worldwide on any occasion, any other event, and any day.
Next, I'd like to call up Tony Cayman, class of 1992, And Tony is he is the only two-time president of the San Antonio A&M. Tony will introduce our guest speaker tonight.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Reagan Freiling, class of 93, for providing me with this great honor to introduce our 2021 muster speaker, Mr. Porter S. Garner III, class of 79. I asked Porter if there was anything he didn't want me to say when I was introducing him today. And he replied, "Hey, don't tell any lies about me, and I won't tell any truths about you." I thought that was some great advice from a very good friend. So let me tell you a little bit about Porter and the proud Aggie that he is from South Texas, growing up in Laredo. Porter graduated from Texas A&M University in 1979 with a BBA in marketing, and he went out to work for Hughes Tool Company. Well, 2 years later, in 1981, he returned to College Station and began his career with the Association of Former Students as a field director. In all of Porter's traveling throughout the whole world, he's met Aggies from all over. Porter has always gained a special affinity of San Antonio and the Texas A&M Club here. In 2000, Porter became the 7th chief executive of the Association of Former Students. And as president and CEO, Porter has inspired innovation through the organization. He and his team rebranded the association with the Aggie ring being the logo. He broadened the organization's reach and relevance throughout the worldwide Aggie network, all to achieve the vision of becoming the premier alumni organization. And Porter and his staff has done just that. I've had several conversations with Porter about other organizations, other alumni associations, and they're always trying to tap in on what Porter and the Association of Former Students has done for Texas A&M. Under Porter's leadership, the Association of Former Students has raised over $350 million, impacting both Texas A&M and Texas Aggies throughout the world. Now, Porter loves Texas A&M, and he just celebrated his 40th anniversary working with the Association of Former Students. So thank you very much, Porter, for all your service. Another thing that Porter loves is he loves coming here to Aggie Park, and he loves visiting with the San Antonio A&M Club and participating in our functions that we have here. Another thing, with the Association of Former Students, they just donated $25,000 towards the monument sign that you just saw as you pulled into Aggie Park, which really has classed up this place. So thank you very much. But I dare to say one more thing, and that's that Porter loves one organization, one group, a little bit more than he loves Texas A&M. That group consists of his wife, Lisa, class of 91, Claire, his daughter, Claire, class of 21, his daughter, Callie, class of 23, and Porter the Fourth, who I think might have a shot at getting into Texas A&M. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce my friend, and he should be yours too, Mr. Porter S. Garner, class of the third, class of 79.
Thank you, Take that notebook with you, would you?
Just want to take that. All right.
Thank you, Tony. Howdy. What an honor to be here, and I'm glad I didn't have to correct Tony. I was a little worried there. Particularly, I didn't know where he was going when he said there's one more organization that Porter might. Made me nervous for a second, Tony. I'm thrilled to be here for a lot of reasons. I go way back with this club, and I go way back with a lot of great Aggies that have led this club for so many years. my old friend Jim Upmore. What a stalwart in San Antonio and with this club. I'm sad that a lot of those folks couldn't come tonight because I was looking forward to seeing them. And I hope they're online celebrating with us. I do want to say one thing. I think it was divine intervention that I'm here tonight, because there was a snafu in me speaking at another muster this year, and it just worked out to where I'm going there next year. And long story short, I lost my father-in-law this year, Dale West, class 57. His widow is here, and my wife is here. And they were from Bernie, and so I believe it was clandestine that I would be here tonight. And so thanks for having me, and thanks for all the support for me to be here tonight. Reagan, thank you for a great job. Y'all always do a great job. Everybody in San Antonio does a great job. But Logan, you got big shoes to fill, brother. I've known at least 40 of those guys on that list, and I can tell you got big shoes to fill. But what a great legacy to inherit, a great legacy of leadership that has led this club so admirably. And when I think about the 100th anniversary, I'll tell you what I think of. I think it was Logan that mentioned it, or maybe it was Tony. But when people talk about the association being the envy of every other alumni association in the country, and I hear that all the time, and it's probably true. The San Antonio A&M Club is the envy of every other A&M club in the Aggie network. I can promise you that. I get to hear that regularly. Most people think I'm a member. They think I've been a past president. They think I was born in San Antonio. They think I'm Jim Upmore's son. I don't know. But anyway, I've taken a lot of heat for that over the years. Y'all know that. But I've taken it proudly because I'm so proud of this club. I love coming to San Antonio. I love coming to Aggie Park. There's not another club like this. You have a lot to be proud of, a great legacy of Aggies and leadership on behalf of Texas A&M in San Antonio. So thank you all for having me. It's an honor to be here. It's exciting to see this club so enthusiastically and actively spreading the Aggie spirit. I have seen that for years. But I want to tell you all something. Enthusiasm is pretty high in College Station, too. From the more than 10,000 Aggies who completed over 1,000 service hours on a project known as Big Event last month, to our recently completed $1.4 billion Lead by Example capital campaign, and our top national rankings in the production of Fortune 500 CEOs, one of whom is here tonight, John Zachary, my friend, class of 1984. All of that has made a lot of Aggies think, and they've voiced this to me, isn't it a great time to be an Aggie? Indeed it is. But I'm going to tell you something, Aggies. When is it not a great time to be an Aggie? I was raised by the class of 45 in Laredo, and I'm going to tell you what, since I could breathe and knew what Gig'em meant, it's always been a great time to be a Texas Aggie. And I believe that to be true because of the time-honored and respect-filled traditions such as the one we celebrate tonight. I proudly promote Muster as our greatest tradition because I believe it distills all of our grand traditions into one single ceremony which epitomizes the absolute best of Texas A&M. In the words of James Pipkin, class of 1929, we do this because we share a great tradition, greater than the single memory of any one of us. So you see, the distinction of Muster is that it is our only tradition which ultimately guarantees the participation of each and every former student. Think about that for a minute. As hard as it is to believe, a few Aggies may never stand as part of the 12th man in Kyle Field. Some may miss silver taps for one reason or another, and even a very small few may never wear an Aggie ring. Each and every one of us will participate in Muster, whether we answer here, as most will tonight, or indeed the year when our name is on the roll call. Muster has been observed through times of prosperity and adversity amidst comfort and conflict. And in 2020, as COVID-19 interrupted our usual routine, forcing many other familiar observances around the country to cancel, Aggie Muster endured. On April 21st, 2020, Aggies around the world mustered. We did not physically gather, but we were united through Muster Live, which brought together the worldwide roll call, the campus muster, and many local A&M club musters virtually. For our team at the Association of Former Students, providing that platform and executing that experience for the entire worldwide Aggie network was one of our proudest moments. It proved once again that the Aggie spirit will always prevail. It is encouraging to me in 2021 to see so many local A&M clubs resume with their annual musters, resume with their annual events, and with more than 300 official A&M musters tonight being held around the world, and likely another 100+ impromptu gatherings. Each has its own distinct flavor and feel, and they all share one common purpose: to simply celebrate our Aggie spirit. From Abilene to Afghanistan, from Honduras to Houston, from Medina County to Mumbai, and from Sydney to San Antonio, this powerful testimony shows just how significant muster is to all of us as members of the Worldwide Aggie Network. I maintain that of all our many revered traditions, this one, perhaps more than any other, best showcases what makes Texas A&M and Texas Aggies so very special. I thank you all for doing your part to honor our legacy of muster and for continuing that legacy so wonderfully tonight. Now, whether you're an Aggie who has never missed a muster or an Aggie who may be, in fact, attending your very first muster ceremony this evening, I know you came here to celebrate and behold the spirit that can never be told. So when I was asked to participate in the San Antonio A&M Club muster, I eagerly accepted the great honor of speaking to this great club. And as I began preparing for my remarks tonight, I did so with the intent of honoring our great tradition and also delivering news from Texas A&M and the Association of Former Students. And there is indeed much good news to share from Aggieland, including our football team finishing 5th in the national rankings last season, our women's basketball team advancing to the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament, and our record-setting feats of our A&M men's and women's track teams. Additionally, I could tell you about the Distinguished Alumnus Award, the highest honor bestowed upon a former student of Texas A&M. And I know you would be proud to hear that in 2021, E.E. McQuillan, class of 1920, will be honored. Mr. McQuillan, in his role as Executive Secretary of the Association, was absolutely the catalyst and instrumental in establishing our muster tradition on the local level. But tonight, I would prefer to focus my remarks on the tradition of muster itself and begin in sharing how April 21st came to mean so much to me as a very young man in Laredo, Texas. It was my father, Porter S. Garner Jr., class of 1945, a proud member of this San Antonio A&M club for many years, who took me to my very first Aggie muster on the banks of the Rio Grande River on the Zachary Ranch. As I recall, it was not necessarily at my insistence that we attended. However, I must admit, I'm very glad that we did, because I will never forget the reverence of the ceremony and the somber roll call that moved my father in such a profound way. It was clear that he felt a sense of duty to attend this ceremony and a powerful connection to each of the names on the roll call. After the ceremony and some Laredo A&M club business, many Aggies retreated to a game of poker and enjoyed other spirits in addition to the Aggie spirit. I do remember thinking, maybe there is something to this muster thing. But you know, I often look back on my first muster in Laredo and a roll call that was understandably much shorter than those of today. And although I did not yet understand how it would affect me as a student, nor certainly as a former student, I knew that this tradition was something very special, and I knew it was something that I wanted to be a part of. The muster came full circle for me a number of years ago when I spoke at the Denton County A&M Club muster. And it wasn't the speech, it wasn't the venue, it wasn't the audience that were particularly significant. It was my intimate participation in the roll call as I answered here for my father, the very man who introduced me to our sacred tradition. And as I answered here for the man who not only taught me, but daily demonstrated all that being a Texas Aggie means, I too felt a special connection with all those who answered the roll call for a departed loved one. I realized that muster allows us a chance to not only honor the loss of a loved one, but to remember all they added to our individual lives and to celebrate their bond with Texas A&M and with fellow Aggies. And during my 40 years of working with Aggies all over the world, I have often reflected on the early years of Aggie Muster. I've reflected on the incredibly powerful emotion that our Aggie forefathers experienced as they mustered during times of war, most notably in 1942, when 25 men, led by General George F. Moore, class of 1908, signed the muster roll during the Japanese onslaught of the island of Corregidor. Now, can you imagine a roll call that consisted entirely of men you knew personally, of men you fought alongside, of men who kept watch while you slept, friends who looked out for each other in the gravest of moments, knowing that the next roll call might very well include their own name? These brave defenders of Corregidor embodied the essence of commitment, camaraderie, and dedication as they mustered in the deep recesses of Malenta Tunnel. And under the most dire circumstances, they honored the call to muster, and in doing so, inspired what has evolved into one of the greatest traditions in college lore. 4 years later, another group of Aggies, 128 strong, gathered on Corregidor for muster. The conditions were much more jubilant as this group gathered after victory had been secured. They traveled from military posts all across the Pacific to remember and honor General Moore and his men, and posed for the iconic photo in front of Malenta Tunnel that is prominently displayed on the Neely mezzanine in the Clayton W. Williams Jr. Alumni Center. This morning, the Association of Former Students conducted our worldwide muster roll call, calling and answering here for 1,401 Aggies included on this year's roll call. Many of you answered with us as the roll call was broadcast all over campus and on AggieNetwork.com. And as that roll call echoed across the campus, many Aggies stopped and responded with a chorus of "Here" to honor their fellow Aggies. It was an incredible honor to be a part of that roll call, joining with Aggies from class years spanning 7 decades in honoring our own. And as I participated in the roll call, I thought of the many great Aggies that we've lost this last year, including my father-in-law, Dale West, class of 1957, Martell Zachary, class of 1954, Joe West, class of 1954, and Bob Epstein, class of 1944. Bob was one of the organizers of the iconic 1946 Corregidor muster, and in 2018 he inspired yet another unique muster gathering. Bob was a veteran of both World War II and the Korean War, and he was scheduled to travel to Washington on an honor flight to visit the World War II and Korean War memorials. When he realized his flight included several Aggies and that they would be flying back to Houston on April 21st, he quickly called the association and said, "Porter, I've got to have a muster on Southwest Airlines." I said, "Bob, we can do that." Our team embraced this opportunity and sent a member along on the honor flight to conduct muster on Southwest Airlines Flight 6168. And as the plane reached its cruising altitude, the Southwest Airlines crew introduced Bailey McCracken, class of 2018, a San Antonio native, who explained the tradition of muster to everybody on the plane, who were mostly non-Aggies, and invited them to join the ceremony. The spirit of Aggie Land was sung. The last corps trip was read. A roll call was conducted, including names from the class of 44, Bob's class, and the class of 2018, Bailey's class. This muster was captured on video and shared as part of our Around the Association series. It won an award. I encourage you, if you'd like to see it, go to AggieNetwork.com or go to our YouTube channel and watch it. You will be inspired. Bob and the other Aggies aboard that honor flight remind us of the many Aggies who have served our nation's armed forces. And like Aggies before them and several Aggies that we all know, they served their country faithfully. Since the Spanish-American War, throughout our current battle against terrorism, our core values remain strong and constant. Excellence, integrity, leadership, loyalty, respect, and selfless service light the path for us in all of our endeavors, whether in service to our country or indeed to each other. Tonight, let us especially remember those currently serving our country who will muster aboard ships, on remote bases, and everywhere in the world our military is currently serving our nation. Aggies will muster in barracks, in churches, in backyards, in conference centers, on drilling platforms, in tents, on the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, in a compound in Saudi Arabia, and on the Korean Peninsula, in dance halls, in rodeo arenas, on Zoom, and at Aggie Park in San Antonio, Texas. Our gatherings extend to every corner of the world, and yet we remain eternally connected through this most special tradition as we each answer here for our fellow Aggies. Texas Aggies have long remembered our freedom, and the sacrifices others have made to preserve our way of life. That is why the Corps of Cadets, the largest uniformed student body outside of the military academies, remains a strong and growing presence and influence on our campus. Its ranks now top 2,300. That is why oak trees line the perimeter of the O.R. Simpson drill field to commemorate each of the Aggies who died in service to our country during World War I. That is why all who enter the Memorial Student Center remove their hats in tribute to those who gave their lives in service to our country. And that is why, as you walk the A&M campus, you will find memorials to former students who served in every major military campaign since our school's founding. That is why you will also find memorials and tributes to Aggies on the island of Corregidor, in Bastogne, Belgium, in Normandy, France, and other places around the world. I believe patriotism and respect for our nation are stronger today at Texas A&M than at any other university in the country. In the summer of 2012, Lieutenant Colonel Roy Tisdale, class of 1992, was tragically killed by a soldier in his command. As plans for his funeral were publicized for College Station, a group from Topeka, Kansas, announced plans to use his service as a platform to promote their misguided agenda. Aggies took action to ensure that Colonel Tisdale's services would remain uninterrupted and that his grieving family would be spared from the circus often created by this group. Aggie students formed a human maroon wall stretching several blocks around one of Aggieland's largest churches to prevent the protesters from disturbing and disrupting the service of an American hero. They stood silently for several hours in the sweltering July heat and humidity and regrouped at the Aggie Field of Honor as Lieutenant Colonel Tisdale was laid to rest. None of them knew Roy Tisdale. They just knew that he was a fellow Aggie and had fallen in service to his country. And they respected his service and cared enough to take action to ensure that his family could appropriately honor their loved one. In December of 2018, the respect and reverence of Aggies was once again on worldwide display as President George H.W. Bush was laid to rest on our campus. The outpouring of support from students who weren't even alive during his presidency was incredible. From the Aggie Band, Ross Volunteers, and Sing Cadets present at the arrival ceremony to the 2,000-plus cadets who lined the Presidential Library grounds, Texas A&M reminded the world that honor, duty, and respect still exist. As my wife Lisa and I stood in the rain with thousands of Aggies awaiting the arrival of President Bush's casket, it was a surreal experience of the very best of Texas A&M on display. For anyone concerned about the future of our school or the measure of our students, please take heart. The spirit of Aggieland is alive and well. E. King Gill once said, "The love for A&M is not born outside. It is born within its walls. You must love it and have it touch your heart. Devotion to one country should be the same." That is the true A&M tradition. And just as E. King Gill stood for Texas A&M in 1922, so too have thousands of Aggies stood up in service to our country. Each of you who have served and protected our nation in military service has earned our deepest appreciation, and I, for one, want to say tonight, thank you. I believe patriotism has always run deep at Texas A&M. We need only to look down at our cherished Aggie rings to be quickly reminded of our patriotic roots. Our treasured rings reflect our rich history and legacy, and indeed our very identity as Texas Aggies. And while the term Texas Aggie may merely be a collegiate label or nickname to those unfamiliar with Aggieland, I can promise you that for more than 536,814 of us, it is much more than might ever be explained. It is a lifelong commitment to our alma mater, to each other, and to the values we all hold dear. I am reminded daily that being a Texas Aggie is as much a state of heart as it is a state of being. And for many of us, being an Aggie supersedes most other stations we may hold in life. And Aggies are not defined by any one accomplishment or ideal, nor certainly by a title. Aggies are defined by an uncommon spirit with distinct values and a display of those values in all that we do. Proudly wearing our ring is a symbolic representation of our commitment and our tangible connection to our worldwide Aggie network. It represents our immediate support of a fellow Aggie with perhaps only one question asked: what class are you? As Aggies, we expect more of each other. We hold ourselves to a higher standard, and I can assure you after 40 years, those expectations are real. Aggies are recognized the world over as fiercely loyal. And as many of us have experienced in airports and restaurants and hotels and meeting rooms around the world, the Aggie ring is a well-recognized resume. Our rings are noticed often by those who never attended Texas A&M. We were reminded of the timeless value of our Aggie ring in April of 2013 when Ike Morris, class of 1933, paid a visit to the Alumni Center to order his second replacement ring. He was 102 years old at the time. He wore out his first ring from years of ranch work, had lost his second ring while in his 80s, and he thought at the time it was silly for an 80-year-old man to spend that much money on a ring that he might not wear for many more years. At 102, however, he changed his mind. And he wanted to have an Aggie ring on his finger for as many years as he had left. He told me that day, excuse me, if I just wear it for a few days, Porter, it will be worth it. Colonel Morris attended A&M during the Depression. He was on the track team. He was president of his senior class, and he was chair of the committee, the ring committee, that established the very criteria that our criteria today is indeed based on. Thank you. Once while hitchhiking home, he was once given a ride by E. King Gill, class of 24, the original 12th man. I was extremely honored that Colonel Morris wore my Aggie ring on his finger until his own Aggie ring was presented to him right here at the San Antonio A&M Club at muster a few weeks later. Many of you were present for that muster. I've always treasured my ring, but I value it even more knowing that it spent a few weeks on Ike's finger. My last visit with Ike was in May of 2019 at his home in Stone Oak, just a few months before he celebrated his 109th birthday. We lost Ike in October of 2019, and I was joined by Aggies around the world in answering here for him last April. His Aggie legacy continues, I'm proud to say. His great-grandson, a San Antonio native, Josh Whedon, is the class of 2022, and just 2 weeks ago received his Aggie ring in our office. For many of us, including Colonel Morris, including Josh, and the more than 6,400 Aggies who received their Aggie rings that week, earning our Aggie ring was perhaps the pinnacle of our career at Texas A&M. For some, it may even overshadow receiving a diploma, and some people may ask why. And on the surface, that question seems quick and easy to answer, but rapidly becomes very difficult to explain. You see, we know what it takes to earn the Aggie ring. We well understand the essence of its value and that it is instilled in the rich history of Texas A&M and its former students. We proudly wear our rings as a tribute to those who walked our campus before us and established that legacy and reputation for Texas A&M. We wear it for the noble Aggies who remain true to our university and true to each other throughout their lives. The moment we put this ring on, we accept that same responsibility ourselves. a responsibility to conduct our lives in accordance with the core values of Texas A&M, a responsibility that each of us eagerly accepts. The Aggie spirit and the bond between Aggies is virtually indescribable. It is a bond well known and well respected worldwide. Among our most loyal Aggies, though, are those who never attended a class at Texas A&M, but are indeed a vital and valuable part of the Aggie network. Aggie parents, Aggie wives and husbands, Aggie grandparents, and loyal friends of Texas A&M, you too play a critical role in shaping the future of Texas A&M and Texas Aggies. As Aggies, we don't take those obligations lightly. We are compelled to embrace our unique heritage and perpetuate it. And just as our great state of Texas embraces its origins, its legends, and the many cultures that come together to create its unique flavor, so too does Texas A&M embrace its history and legacy. There is no question that Texas A&M is an outstanding institution of higher education. However, I believe that our university is world-renowned because of our world-renowned Aggie network, who loyally support Texas A&M year in and year out. So as we gather tonight to commemorate our sacred tradition of muster, I believe we are compelled to reflect on what it means to be an Aggie, to celebrate what it means to be an Aggie, indeed to demonstrate what it means to be an Aggie by simply gathering together. And we gather to support our university in so many ways, by standing in the cool darkness for silver taps, locking arm in arm in stifling heat and sawing varsity's horns off, supporting the San Antonio A&M Club, supporting the Association of Former Students, and yes, by answering roll call at muster. All of this and so much more keeps our Aggie spirit alive and our Aggie network so revered. Fellow Aggies, we are privileged to rejoice in a spirit that is not about style or symbolism, but indeed about substance and support. A spirit founded in pride and rooted in tradition. As proud former students, we reflect today on that rich history. A history that includes Aggies who have died for our nation's freedom, a history that represents honor and integrity, and a history that today finds the Aggie spirit in 127 countries around the world. Our history boasts an uncommon bond that each of us proudly shares, a bond that recognizes we are individually unique as we are collectively common. Ours is a bond that transcends race and rivalry. It is a bond each of us promotes and protects. It matters not when we walk the Texas A&M campus, how we arrived, or from where we began our journey. Our bond links generation to generation. It is a bond that is recognized and respected throughout the world. My friends, being a Texas Aggie is truly remarkable. It is undeniably unique, and it is unquestionably admired. Being an Aggie is certainly many things to many people, but I would offer to you, if it is indeed one thing, to all who know it, it is forever. Thank you very much.
Porter, thank you for sharing that message with us. We're grateful to you and Lisa for making the trip to San Antonio and making our 100th year anniversary and the 2021 muster ceremony special. Thank you. We'll continue with our muster program with the reading of Roll Call for the Absent by Justin Scantlin, class of 2013.
Thank you, Reagan. Roll call for the absent by Dr. John Ashton, class of 1906. In many lands and climes, this April day, proud sons of Texas A&M unite. Our loyalty to country school we pay, and seal our pact with a bond of common might. We live again those happy days of yore, on campus, field, in classroom, hall, at drill. Fond memories bring a sigh, but nothing more. Now we are men, and life is one great thrill. On Fortress Isle, 79 years ago today, a group of gallant Aggies, led by Moore, held simple rights, which to us all doth say, the spirit shall prevail over cannon roar. They thought of home and all we hold most dear. Where are they now, those boys we knew so well? Ask of the winds, let smile repress a tear. Think only of their glory when they fell. Corregidor, forevermore a hallowed name to countless sons of Texas yet unborn. Symbolic like, it stands for deathless fame, a shrine sublime till resurrection morn. Softly call the muster, let comrade answer here. Their spirits hover around us as if to bring us cheer. Mark them present in our hearts, we'll meet some other day. There is no death but life eternal for heroes such as they.
Good, thank you. We will now begin the roll call and candlelight service to honor the memories of the fellow Aggies whose death prevents their answering roll call at this annual muster. When you hear the name of your loved one, friend, classmate, or buddy, answer here. And if you have been appointed to do so as friend or family, please proceed to the front and light a candle in their memory. Mr. Glenn Baker, class of 55.
Here.
Mr. Douglas Ballou, class of 79.
Here.
Mr. Bernard Bornett, class of 60.
Here.
Mr. Ryan Bowles, class of 24. Mr. Lloyd Booth, class of 52. Mr. Richard Brady, class of 52. Mr. Bill Bryce, class of 70. Mr. William Birch, class of 60. Mr. Rene Carrera, class of 92. Mr. Hugh Cadras, class of 58.
Here.
Mr. Harry Chandler, class of 59.
Here.
Lieutenant Colonel Richard Capel, class of 56. Ms. Ann Chandler, class of 75. Mr. Vernon Clemens, class of 59. Ms. Jeanette Kahns. Mr. Howard Connor, class of 65.
Here.
Ms. Lauren Contreras, class of 17. Mr. James Costin, class of 59. Mr. Cole Dameron, class of 05. Mrs. Monique Darrington, class of 97. Mr. Robert Dobbins, class of 52.
Here.
Mr. Andy Duffy, class of 78.
Here.
Mr. Lewis Farr, class of 66.
Here.
Colonel John B. Ferrata, Jr., class of 59.
Here.
Mr. Harold Florence, class of 64.
Here.
Mr. Charles Fox, class of 57. Mr. Joseph Galley, class of 53.
Here.
Mr. Diego Gallegos, class of 85. Mr. Raul Garcia, class of 61. Mr. Armando Garza, class of 71. Mr. Craig Gontarek, class of 79. And Colonel Michael Grabfelder, class of 70.
Mr. Philip Graham, class of 13. Miss Sally Graham, class of 14. Mr. Ronald Grenrod, class of 71. Mr. Tim Greisenbeck, class of 73. Mr. Albert Garona, class of 60. Mr. Oton Guerrero, class of 51. Mr. Steve Hackenby, class of 71.
Here.
Mr. John Hale, class of 61.
Here.
Mr. Dan Hill, class of 60.
Here.
Dr. Gordon Hill, class of 69. Dr. Ralph Hill, Jr., class of 70. Mr. Roger John, class of 63. Mr. James Johnson, class of 67. Dr. Robin Jones, Jr., class of 73.
Here.
Mr. Roy Kinslow, class of 46. Mr. David Kraus, class of 59.
Here.
Dr. Lawrence Lane, class of 86. Mrs. Karen Lerma, class of 76. Mr. Benjamin Macias, class of 01.
Here.
Mr. Michael Mann, class of 67.
Here.
Dr. Joshua Martin, class of 08.
Here.
Mrs. Peggy Mays.
Here.
Lieutenant Colonel Gerald McKinney, class of 56. First Lieutenant Edward Harris Mitchell, Jr., class of 46.
Here.
Ms. Melinda Moses, class of 82.
Here.
Mr. John Neal, class of 61. Mr. John Otto, class of 70. Mr. Michael Owen, class of 77.
Here.
Mr. Stephen Pavlik, class of 80.
Here.
Mr. Daniel Pena, class of 45.
Here.
Mr. Brandon Pulowski, class of 20.
Here.
Mr. Daniel Puckett, class of 82.
Mr. Dan Poland, class of 64. Mr. Raul Ramirez, class of 62. Mr. Stuart Renault, class of 79.
Here.
Colonel Robert Rich, class of 45. Ms. Roxana Ruiz Felter, class of 98.
Here.
Mr. John Sackett, class of 59. Mr. Juan Sines, class of 74.
Here.
Mr. Esmeralda Sines, class of 65. Mr. Curtis Sanford, class of 83. Mr. Stephen Sanders, class of 96. Mr. Paul Sanders, class of 52. Mr. Stephen Saunders, class of 02. Mr. Gary Schuhart, class of 68. Mr. Millard Schuhart, class of 51. Mr. John Shootback, class of 68. Miss Sonia Shannon, class of 03. Dr. Harry Smalley, class of 54. Mr. Byron Spencer, class of 87. Mrs. Mary Elizabeth Stengel. Mr. Michael Taylor, class of 74. Mr. Fred Valentino, class of 41. Mr. Joseph Vanderwall, class of 67. Mr. Raymond Welder, class of 55. Mr. Dale West, class of 57. Dr. Joel Earl West, class of 54. Mr. Lewis Westerman, class of 72. Mr. Chris Wimberly, class of 95. Colonel James Woodward, class of 62. Miss Kristen Wooster, class of 16. Mr. Henry Bartell Zachary Jr., class of 54. Mr. Michael Zazula, class of 83. Mr. Charles Zinsmeyer, class of 86. Lee Ellie.
Are there any Aggies who should be added to the 2021 muster roll call? If so, please call out their name and answer here and come forward and light their candle. If not, please rise as Tim Guidry plays taps.
Please be seated. Howdy. I'm Bob Sims, class of 79. We got a bunch of 79ers here tonight. Last chord trip. It was Judgment Day in Aggie land, and tenseness filled the air. All knew there was a trip at hand, but not a soul knew where. Assembled on the drill field was a world-renowned 12th man, the entire fighting Aggie team, and the famous Aggie band. And out in front with Royal Guard, the reviewing party stood. St. Peter and his angel staff were choosing bad from good. First he surveyed the Aggie team, and in terms of angel swore, "By Jove, I do believe I've seen this gallant group before. I've seen them play since way back when, and they've always had the grit. I've seen them win, and I've seen them lose, but I've never seen them quit. No need for us to tarry here, deciding upon their fates. 'Tis as plain as a halo on my head, they've opened heaven's gates." And when the 12th man heard this, they let out a mighty yell that echoed clear to heaven and shook the gates of hell. "And what group is this upon the side?" St. Peter asked his aide, that swelled as if to burst with pride when we our judgment made. "Why, sir, that's the cadet corps that's known both far and wide for backing up their fighting team, whether they've won or lost and tied." "Well then," said St. Peter, "it's very plain to me that within the realms of heaven they should spend eternity. And have the Texas Aggie band at once commence to play, for their fates too we must decide upon this crucial day." And the drum major, so hearing, slowly raised his hand and said, "Boys, let's play the Spirit for the last time in Aggie land." And the band poured forth the anthem in notes both bright and clear, and 10,000 Aggie voices sang the song they hold so dear. And when the band had finished, St. Peter wiped his eyes and said, "It's not so hard to see, they're meant for paradise." And the colonel of the cadet corps said as he stiffly took his stand, "It's just another corps trip, boys. We'll march in behind the band."
Would you please stand as we listen to the Spirit of Aggie land, followed by our closing remarks.
Spirit
Giggle. Please be seated. The 2021 muster ceremony is now complete, and I need to thank so many people that without their help, this could not have been possible. First and foremost, Porter and the association, thank you for all your support and help. And we'd like to get a picture of you by the sign, too, before you go. It looks outstanding. Thank you, Porter. Also, Mark and Mary here at Aggie Park. None of this would be possible without those two. Thank you. All of the Aggie Women's Club and Glenda for getting the food and for everything you ladies do. Thank you very much. Also, the muster committee, Vince Wu and Justin Scantlin, thank you all very much for all the help that you've given us. And I'm going to add Dave and Mandy Scott to the muster crew for all your organization and getting the color guard. Thank you all. Tim, thank you. Also, I want to give a round of applause to Kyle Eisenhower in the back for making our live stream possible. Thank you, Kyle. Also, I want y'all to hear the rest of the story, how Porter said this was kind of divine, how he got here. So when I found out, which I should have known, and Bill has told me, you got to get on these muster speakers early. And I kind of dragged my feet a little bit, and I looked around, and I said, oh, man, my first call is going to be to Porter. So I call, and I leave a message. His secretary emails me back, or I talked to her on the phone, first, and she said, he's booked 5 years out. And I thought, oh, no. So I'm on the way taking my son, who was here just a second ago, to his soccer practice, and she calls me back and says, you're not going to believe this, but he's open this year. And I said, great, what do I need to do? And she said, you need to send a formal invitation. And so I'm out at Almost Basin Park at soccer practice with 10 first graders, and I'm thinking, I've got to get on this. I don't know what to do. So I start blowing up Mark's phone, trying to get a hold of him, and I can't. So I type out, in my mind, a formal invitation to Porter, as any good Aggie could do, on the best I could. I probably misspelled a couple words through autocorrect, but I sent it to him. I called your secretary, and I said, how's that? And she goes, that's not good enough. You've got to have the formal letterhead from Aggie Park. So finally, Mark got a hold of Porter, and we got him here, and it couldn't have been a better time. So thank you, Porter, for being here. Now, I charge each of you to remain firm in your loyalty to your country and your God, to keep warm in your hearts your affection for each other and for our alma mater. Now it is the time for us to share in camaraderie, to eat a little, to live over the days we spent at A&M. Please stay and enjoy the refreshments provided by the San Antonio A&M Women's Club and the San Antonio A&M Club, and enjoy this opportunity to get to know your fellow San Antonio Aggies. May God be with each of us until we meet again. The muster ceremony is officially dismissed until April the 21st, 2022. Thanks and giggle. I do have a couple